All right. So in the last installment, we talked about how the Narcissist from Netflix tied me up in kind of what the psychologists would call a humiliation ritual. This is what they call it in the narcissist abuse circles. Of course, it was a lie, but one I couldn't fight as we discussed. And basically put me in this situation where for 15 years I felt psychologically bound to her in a relationship that never existed, that I never wanted, never asked for any of it. But bygones, I let it happen, I suppose. Had I been stronger and had more courage, I would have just owned the trans stuff right then and there, and that could have been the end of it, maybe. And I eventually did. It took a little time. I was still in the closet at the time. And I guess that's what I had to work through during that time. But what's crazy is that I didn't just feel bound up to her. It truly felt the whole time like I was really losing all of my energy, all of my creativity, like I was being drained like a battery. And the thing is, some mutual acquaintances will casually refer to this person as an energy vampire. And I could see that. I took it as a metaphor. When she's around people, she sucks up the energy in the room, that sort of a thing. Until I got into some of the spiritual community, which we'll get back into that in a bit, but they take it a much more literal meaning. And the way it felt, and from the way I got all my energy came back once I broke that connection, it's hard to disagree with them. And that brings me to some of what I wanted to talk about, how the things I remembered. This somewhat, I don't know if it was that same week or, it's a long time ago and the memories are a little bit blurry. But sometime before writing that email, I'd gone to a party with her, and she had parties all the time at her house, big parties, lots of people there. Always a lot of fun. It was part of what I liked about hanging out with them. I won't deny that. And there was a lot of drinking involved. But at one time in particular, I had the weirdest occurrence. I saw someone, and I don't know if you've probably seen it in movies. I think maybe in The Exorcist or something. You've seen where somebody looks up and they see like a flash goes across someone's face, and you see their true face all of a sudden. And I had something like that with someone, and I didn't know who they were, but it was just the weirdest thing, like a djinn seeing their real face or something. I don't know how the spiritualists would describe it. I remind you, until a couple months ago, atheist for 50 years. I understand how crazy stuff like that sounds. I can't hardly believe it myself. I'm still not sure I do. But I know what I saw that night at that party. And someone's face just flickered and changed, and I saw something evil, something dark there. And I mentioned it to my friend, the person I thought was my friend, and her husband, who I also thought was my friend. I was just like, oh man, I just got the weirdest vibe from that guy, and I don't know, it was a bad vibe. And I thought, they'd dismiss it. Oh, okay, yeah, haha, yeah, you're probably drunk or whatever, But then they got weird. They got real weird about it. They started just pressing me with questions and questions. Oh, what did you see? What did you see? What did you see? Very, very strange. I mean, like as if they knew something and were shocked that I had seen it. And again, it was a party and I was drunk, and so I didn't think too much of it at the time, but it stored it away in the memory banks. And then I remember later on that same party, someone made a real concerted effort to get me to drink something. Somebody mixed up a cocktail for me, and I think I had a few sips of it, but I didn't drink much of it. And then I'm pretty sure it was the next morning or the next day when I was hanging out with this girl and her husband, and they made they offered me some Oreos. They were like, "Oh, these are organic from the Whole Foods or whatever," and but they were in a baggie, not in a commercial package of any sort, which I thought was weird. But again, they were my friends. I didn't think anything of it. So I ate one of the Oreos. But of course, food that was not in a commercial packaging from people who may have been involved in the things I'm kind of describing. This is starting to sound like cult ritual stuff. Like they fed me food that they'd mixed graveyard dirt in with or something. I don't know. I'm just speculating. I don't know. But that's certainly how it was starting to feel. And then you combine that with the claims that she's an energy vampire and the things I'm hearing from the spiritualist community, and I'm very much starting to think that they were actually part of some kind of a satanic, I don't know, I don't like that word satanic for various reasons we'll get into, but some sort of cult, ritualistic cult of some sort. And you get into also the fact that she was love bombing me and clearly wanted physical relations with me, or at least was acting like she did. And I couldn't figure it out because she was doing it right in front of her husband. So I was like, okay, either she's just cucking this guy, I don't know, or they're polyamorous. But then if they're poly, I don't have a problem with that. Why not just come out and say, hey, we're poly. You want to be part of a trio or whatever. Okay, fine. We could talk about that. But the fact that they wouldn't talk about it, that's part of why I just thought we were friends. Okay, so that's what it is. I'm thinking she's hitting on me. That wasn't just an illusion. We're just friends. Okay, well, that's fine. We can be friends. I like being friends. But now you take everything I was remembering about what clearly seems to have been some sort of a cult, and what clearly seems to be this polyamory, and it's hard to escape the conclusion that they were part of some sort of polyamorous sex cult. But that's as far as I can go with what I actually know. Go any farther, then we have to start going into much deeper into intuitive stuff, and it's hard to get beyond that without getting into libelous stuff. But we'll think about it some more and get back to you.